when we get married, we do so with the intention that we'll be happy forever after. But for 1 in 3 couples, it ends up in divorce. And many times that's acrimonious divorce as well. But it doesn't have to be so. And today I'm going to talk to family lawyer Suzanne Todd, who has a practice in the city, about how to divorce without tears, if that's really possible. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Suzanne what it is that stresses her out on a day-to-day basis.
Good morning, Tricia. Thank you very much. What stresses me out on a day-to-day basis? Well, everyone who knows me knows that I like to be very organized. So I am a list girl. So I have a list for this and a list for that. And in these days of inboxes where they are overflowing, making sure that I get through the list on a day-to-day basis is what stresses me out. In terms of things to do to try and help that, every morning I make sure I go out and I have a walk in the fresh air. It gives you that time when you're away from the electronic devices. Absolutely. And you have time to think about things. It's probably the only time of the day where I am not surgically attached to an iPhone or an iPad or sitting in front of a computer screen.
Yeah, and I find those moments, I get my best ideas when I'm not even thinking. I'm just kind of mooching, really.
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's giving yourself the space. And sometimes not just ideas, but a problem that you left the house with, by the end of the walk, spontaneously, with no effort, you've got a solution. Oh, I know what I need to do. Because
I totally agree. I come into Waterloo in the morning to go to work, and usually I work at the Old Bailey, and usually by the time I get to Blackfriars Bridge, that's where the inspiration strikes.
Old Bailey, I've always wanted to go. Not as a required visitor, though.
No. Just to have a look and see what's happening.
Okay, so let's talk about the subject at hand. So it's 1 in 3 marriages end in divorce. What, in your opinion and your experience, is the main reason that people decide to separate?
So I think what I have become an expert in over the last 20 years is conflict resolution. And conflict is the main reason why people get divorced. But the reality is, Tricia, there isn't one reason. It can be a multitude of small things over a period of time. Very few people, in my experience, have a light bulb moment where they suddenly wake up one morning and say, this is it. Life is a roller coaster. As you say, everyone who gets married starts with the best intentions. I remember when I got married, all of my clients thought I had completely lost the plot. And they were going, what are you doing? And I was like, well, we all have to believe in love and life. So we start with the best intentions, but life is a roller coaster. What I find with many people is they want to attribute blame, because attributing blame is a process and a way in which they can move forwards. We are very excited as family lawyers that finally no fault divorce is coming in the autumn this year, fingers crossed, after decades of campaigning. And I think that will help a lot of individuals, because at the minute, quite often at the start, we have to blame somebody and we have to put a reason why the marriage has broken down, as opposed to continental Europe, where you can consensually say, just can't do this anymore together. We jointly agree that we want to unlock this and move forwards. And I think that will make a big difference. And I think the other reason for a lot of the acrimony that builds up is people want to rummage through the attic of their marriage. And that's not what we as divorce lawyers want to do. That's not what the courts want us to do. You'll remember way back in the case of Mills and McCartney, where she wanted to dig into behaviours, and the High Court said, no, we're forward looking. What has happened in the past has happened. Mrs. Owens, who you will also remember very recently, she ended up at the Supreme Court with her 27 reasons that weren't good enough to get her divorce. And the reality is, even in every good relationship, there are grounds for divorce.
Yes, I'm thinking yes. I think you need to be really robust in a relationship, don't you? And I think that theme of blame exists before there is any decision to divorce. So because life is stressful, normal life is stressful, where we're experiencing a problem, we kind of need an outlet. And often what we do is we take things out on our other halves, and which is not the place it belongs. So sometimes people don't see that. And what you're saying about people wanting to, I can't remember how you put it, but I loved it. You said something like explore the attic of their marriage.
Yeah.
What that is needing therapy to overcome what went wrong, which is very different to, okay, let's get this divorce done.
Exactly. I got a text message recently from a friend who apparently was asking on behalf of a friend, was not taking the bin out frequently sufficient grounds for a divorce. And I said, I'm really sorry, but you're not going to get there. That's just life.
So having to remind your husband often of that is not grounds either.
Not enough.
Okay, but it is interesting. So there's something there about, before you even make the decision, managing those differences. But once the decision is made, what are the things that, because I know that you've got a special interest, haven't you, in making it go smoothly and respectfully.
Indeed.
So what are the things that people can do to make sure that it is a divorce without tears, so far as is reasonably practicable?
So I think, the factors that come into play that we see that increase the acrimony are fear, the loss, because it is grief, the loss of a relationship. It is the same as the grief cycle, and also the uncertainty for the future. So those are the main things that we see. I think the other thing that is very important to remember is that the process is a marathon and not a sprint. So it is not something that is going to be sorted out in a matter of days or weeks or anything like that. So that fear and uncertainty fuels people inside, and they get what I call, they end up with their blinkers on, and I call it the sort of litigation tunnel, the black litigation tunnel. And what is important for us as family lawyers is to help them see what's outside, and to make sure that they get to the end of that tunnel in one piece. That is really important. I think another thing that impacts the level of acrimony is the choice of solicitors. So the solicitors that the parties choose can have a huge impact on how their case is dealt with. I often talk about the Richter scale. We operate at sort of 5 or 6 on a Richter scale, fair, moving things forward. If there are people who operate at 10 or in fact above of the Richter scale, then the level of acrimony starts here, and it's very hard, no matter how everybody tries, over the course of that marathon to bring it full circle back to a position where it enables people to deal at a more sensible level. So it is. And I think the third thing that can impact the level of acrimony is where the individuals are on their emotional journey. So we will see, as you will see, people who've been thinking about this for years and years and years and years, and then eventually they say, okay, we're going to pull the sticking plaster off, it's going to hurt really badly, but I'm going to sort this out. And quite often the other person literally has no idea. So if you think about it like the 100-meter track, quite often you've got somebody who's 99 meters down the 100-meter track in terms of that emotional journey, and then the other person isn't even in the starting blocks, let alone out of the starting blocks.
Sometimes they don't know there's a track.
Exactly.
Oh, there's a track? Oh, we're on the track?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
We're laughing because it's being in that situation is awful. I've worked with clients who've said no, they haven't said anything to their partner, and so their partner is completely oblivious. I think one of the other things, so the certainty is one where people need closure. They want closure. You want to know what is the end point. But as you say, it's a marathon. So kind of understanding that just to manage yourself during this time, but also you're still in a relationship, aren't you? Even though you're leaving the relationship, even when you've left, especially if the children are involved, you're still in a relationship. It's just not a married one.
Correct.
So what advice do you have for people who who are fighting, and I see this a lot about who's winning which point, like I've got the kids, or I've got the money, or I get the car or the house or the dog or whatever is the thing. There's kind of a winner and loser mentality going on.
Which there shouldn't be.
Yeah, which there should be. So although you can understand, because it feels like punishing the other one, doesn't it? So what advice do you have for people going through that toxic journey?
So I think one of the questions is, when you say divorce without tears, is it possible to do it amicably? My view is, despite doing this for more than 2 decades, yes, it is. And in fact, I have just completed a divorce for someone that was super straightforward, super calm. And the phrase that I always think of is my mentor and my boss when I was an associate, Jill Doran. Her first letter in every case, she always said, let's try and achieve an elegant disengagement.
Beautiful.
And I think if you at least start from that platform, there is a hope of moving forward. So starting with that mentality of trying to deal with things elegantly, I think it is really important. I think it is important for people to listen to advice. I think it is important. There is a tremendous amount of noise in the divorce world. If you go on to Google, overwhelmed, clients are overwhelmed with the noise that is around. And I think the thing to remember is every single case is different. The court has such a wide discretion. Every home life, every home situation is totally different, and that is part of what creates the uncertainty and fear of what we were talking about a minute or two ago. But also it allows us to create solutions that work for each individual family unit, which is also very important. So making sure that you, in that context, choose the right process for your marathon. Because if you choose the right process for your family, for your marathon, whether that's mediation, collaborative law came over from the US and Canada about 15 years ago now. It's not used a lot. There are still some of us who are practicing collaborative lawyers, which means the clients and the lawyers are around the table together. They are looking to create a holistic solution for their family. Obviously, we have the court process and the voluntary process. We at Withers have created a new end-to-end process, the Withers separation model, where we will help the clients go from the start to the end under one roof, which is new and novel. And you'll have seen recent articles in the continent. You can have one lawyer, and they're starting to think about that in terms of
both parties.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I do a lot of Italian family law, and in Italy it's called negoziazione assistita, assisted negotiation.
I knew that.
I did. And I think that process is really important. Trying to ignore the noise, because people, their friends and family and work colleagues and all of that sort of stuff. And I think the other thing that is really important to pick up on the point that you just said is there are no winners and losers in family law, no matter what anybody thinks. People have to take very brave decisions about their future. I had a client call yesterday with somebody who I first spoke to 5 years ago. Life has moved on. She knows that for her health and well-being, she should not stay in that relationship. But she is also very scared about what would happen if she pulls that band-aid off, and what happens after that. But and I can appreciate that fear, having worked in the family law world.
Yeah, and I guess that some people can be very vengeful as well. So how you get into that position of deciding to separate and how you interact with the other person. We can't completely control everybody's responses, but there are certainly things that we can do to
I completely agree.
Response.
No, and I completely agree.
The subject as well of children, because even though people say, oh, they don't know, kids know, they pick things up.
Yeah.
So whether they witness anything or hear anything, they certainly feel an energy of discord. And I work with children sometimes, and they feel so torn, and sometimes are even used as a pawn. So I don't know if you've got any tips about how people should manage that so that the kids come through as whole as possible.
I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, Tricia, in the sense that the kids, that they can feel the vibes with the parents at home. I think the first thing I would say is going back to my mediation training, where we were taught in mediation, pretend the children are in the room with you.
Wonderful.
Your children are in the room with you as you're talking, as you're trying to sort this out. What memories do you want your children to have of this time in their life? And I think if you can start from there, I think the second thing they need is reassurance.
Yeah.
We still love you. And it's separating that husband and wife, mum and dad, as you were saying earlier, the relationship is going on. So that reassurance is super, super important. Limiting the flashpoints, and I think that's one of the things that's changed quite a lot in the time that I've been a family lawyer. So now, for example, people will do pick up and drop offs at school or at nurseries, and it's limiting that. There was a fantastic training video for family lawyers, which Resolution did, of one of those 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon drop-offs that just went completely wrong, where the child had fallen asleep in the car, the homework hadn't been done for some reason, the clothes weren't and you could just see it all unfolding in a matter of minutes, and then the child is a witness to all of that. So avoiding flashpoints if at all possible. Nowadays we also have the benefit of technology. So there are fantastic co-parenting apps. One that a lot of our clients use is Our Family Wizard. It's an American one. I know that Amicable have just launched one as well. But I think what a lot of clients say to me is, when I see a text message or a WhatsApp come through from my husband or a wife, my stomach automatically clenches. So that it's the negative energy without you haven't even read what the message is. It might be a positive message, but your starting point is, oh my goodness. So actually finding a completely separate communication stream that is dedicated to your children, what activities they're doing, where they want to be, their health records, their school reports, what that works for a lot of our clients. I was speaking to somebody this week who he got divorced 10 years ago, and his boys are now almost grown up. And I love the way he described it to me, because he and his ex-wife have got on incredibly well. And he said, Suzanne, it was like a joint business. I treated it like a joint business venture. The boys were our joint business venture. It was up to both of us to, teach them everything that they needed to know to be able to move into adulthood. And he said, you work with people that you don't always like, but you just have to get on with it and you have to work with them. And I'd never really thought about this joint business venture idea. And again, it goes back to what you were saying. It's which hat are you wearing? Are you wearing the parental hat? I think one of the other things I would say is don't stay together for the sake of the children. Picking up on what you were saying a minute ago, I had an experience where it was a divorce I'd done about 10 years ago, and my client had waited and waited until her eldest son had finished his A levels and her youngest son had finished GCSEs, and she decided that was the appropriate time. And bizarrely, 10 years later, I met the eldest son, which is just a complete happen chance. And he knew that I had been his mum's lawyer, and he said, she did it wrong, because my younger brother was left at home by himself for 2 years to cope with, I got to go off to university, I got to have a new life, whereas he was at home. And so much thought had gone into the planning and the timing and all of that sort of stuff. And I very rarely would see someone with that benefit of hindsight. All of that time later. I think, picking up on one of the other things that you said, there's a fabulous parenting expert called Christina McGee. She's American, and she was here a couple of years ago, and I had the pleasure of doing her 2-day training course. And the thing that stuck in my mind from her is, you can't control the other person's reaction.
Absolutely.
But you can control how you react to them.
And
that is super important.
Because if you can remain calm, and interact in a respectful way, that's more likely to create a respectful interaction. So I absolutely, there's so much useful stuff in here, thank you. But there's something you said about act as if the children are in the room. Genius idea. But sometimes there aren't children. But I think it's important for people to go into this thinking, who do I want to be?
Yeah.
You know, how do I want to feel about myself at the end of this?
Yes.
And being, there was what's her name, Gwyneth Paltrow was pilloried for her comment about conscious uncoupling.
Yes.
It is easy, but I actually quite like it because it means consciously thinking about how we're going to separate, how we want things to be. And they do have kids, and I think that's actually quite clever.
No, I agree. In fact, I've just been listed in the Tatler little black address book in that section, which is very exciting.
Oh, how exciting!
I think the other things I would say is for the children, get them expert support.
Yes.
You know, counselors, therapists, and I think the other thing that the schools now are so much better than they were before in terms of promoting and looking after the children's well-being. And I think the other thing, I don't know if you've watched The Marriage Story, which came out about, is it 2 years ago? I think the film came out. No, I've slightly lost track of time. And
really?
it was about it was about a couple. So they were based in New York. She wanted to move back to California. They had one son. And I actually think that everyone who is getting divorced should sit down and watch that film. Because it was incisive, compassionate. We watched it as a team. The team sat down at 6 o'clock one evening with popcorn and beer to watch it, and you could see the impact of some of the things that we've been talking about, the impact of the different choices of lawyers, the impact of doing things without thinking about the other person. And I'm not going to ruin the ending of the film. It has a positive ending, but I think especially for people with children, watching that film and what can happen through their choices, and all of our actions have consequences. Unlike the BBC programme, The Split, with the divorce series, which I understand is coming back for a third time, a lot of family lawyers wrote to the BBC saying that's not quite the way it is. and you know, we appreciate its drama, but actually divorces, you know, it's one of the top most stressful things that people will potentially go through in their life.
It really is. One last question for you. You said at the beginning that who you work with, how do people choose, how do people get to know what is a good solicitor that's going to be helpful to the process and one that is going to be inflammatory to the process or rubbish? One of the two or both even.
Yeah, I mean, I think talking to people who've worked with that person before, you know, checking out their credentials, you know, that there are quotes in the legal directories, chambers, you know, and you will get a sense of someone from that. I think, you know, for us, a lot of our referrals come from old clients, so they appreciate the way we work. The best referrals are obviously from the other side when they refer their friends, because of how we've dealt with a case and moving it forwards.
I guess one of the clues would be, I'm just kind of thinking, one of the clues would be if in the consultation, the solicitor is saying, we're going to get them, don't worry, we're going to get everything, they're going to really suffer. That's kind of inflammatory language.
Yeah.
So if
I agree, choice of language. And I also, you know, in that first meeting, we at Withers, we are providing strategy to that client. They are coming out knowing which are their options and which way forwards. And I think you are absolutely right. You know, I've had occasions where someone has come back and said, oh, I've talked to so and so, but I didn't like how they were describing how this would work. So I think you're absolutely right. Again, it goes back to that, there's lots of noise, isn't it? It goes back to that listening. And actually, when you are stressed and anxious, your ability to listen, it's much more difficult.
Yes.
So it is.
That's been so helpful. I have no plans on getting divorced.
Good.
I don't think my husband has.
My husband says we'll never get divorced because he knows all the tricks of the trade.
But it's such a fascinating area, and so many people have to go through this. So having that advice is really helpful.
Pleasure.
But I always ask my clients if there's a book that they have read that they've found inspiring or helpful in their lives that other people might benefit from too. And I think you've got one in mind.
I do. So this time last year, I was at the Sunday Times Wellbeing Festival, the first one at the Barbican. And this is a book called The Art of Rest by Claudia Hammond. And she was one of the speakers. And it was the largest global survey. So 18,000 people in 135 different countries.
Wow.
And what is interesting is, so they then run through the top 10 in reverse order. So the top 3 are reading, spending time in nature, and wanting to be alone. So interesting, social media and all of those things. And interesting, spending time with friends and family doesn't make it into the top 10 either.
Because it's not rest.
That's exactly.
Exactly. So you the same as me, spending a lot of time with clients, and it's quite intense work.
Exactly.
Using that time alone. Just to decompress.
Exactly.
Is very important, and a bit of nature is lovely as well. I'm very lucky. I've got some
fabulous
places.
I went out on a new route for a walk yesterday morning and didn't anticipate ending up in a swamp for part of it. But my delightful coral trainers are now black. So that's my job for this weekend, to work out how to rescue them.
Oh dear. All right. Well, that's so helpful. Thank you very much indeed, Suzanne.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
I do hope you found it helpful too, really enlightening and entertaining. So do please like and share. And you never know, this might arrive just at the right time for somebody who's going through a bad time. You might want to make some comments below if you've got your own tips that would add to the depth of what we've done today. And if you haven't subscribed already, do that too. Take care.